In the press and on television, you very often see handshakes, big announcements, parades. But what goes on behind in the detail, the meanings of words, phrases, and to show all the preparation that goes behind detailed diplomatic engagements. In today's show, we will focus on the India-Japan relationship. Both countries have described the relationship as a special, strategic, and global partnership. India has described the relationship as a cornerstone of its Act East policy. Japan has described India as an important partner in the context of the Indo-Pacific. The bilateral relationship has strengthened considerably. Trade is at a level of about $16 billion. Annual investments from Japan in India have waxed and waned, but over the past 2 decades now amounts to almost $30 billion. Japanese assistance to India is annually in the range of $3 to $4 billion, and Japan has now committed to support the high-speed rail, the bullet train project between Ahmedabad and Mumbai. After the Second World War, Japan was a reluctant partner with any country in defense cooperation. But the two countries in 2008 did a joint declaration on security cooperation. And after that, they have had an annual ministerial dialogue. India had its first 2+2 dialogue of foreign and defense ministries at the level of top bureaucrats with Japan. And now they are looking at defense supplies and cooperation in research and technology related to defense. In terms of regional and global issues, in terms of the Indo-Pacific, there is an assessment of cooperation. Japan and India support each other's candidatures for permanent membership of UN Security Council. On global issues such as climate change and terrorism, they have strong cooperation. So to understand all this and the dimensions of India's relationship with Japan, we have a special guest in the studio today, Ambassador Kenji Hiramatsu. Welcome, Ambassador Hiramatsu.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
I saw that in a message that you posted on the website of your embassy just this month, you referred to the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Japan in October this year, last month. His third visit to Japan since he became Prime Minister in 2014, and his fifth summit with his counterpart since that time. But you describe this visit as the most historical and successful. What is the reason for that assessment?
I saw a lot of substance in our discussions, and we came up with a lot of concrete results, such as you mentioned, the agreement to have a 2+2 ministerial level dialogue, and we came up with a very important economic issues like 75 billion swap agreement, and also we committed ourselves certain ODA projects. We are very pleased to continue to support important projects such as high-speed railway project Mumbai Ahmedabad. So I saw many concrete results out of their discussion. At the same time, Prime Minister Abe, Prime Minister Modi, as usual, enjoyed a very deep strategic dialogue, reflecting their partnership and friendship, which is very deep. The one very visual demonstration was Prime Minister Abe invited Prime Minister Modi in his private house in nearby Mount Fuji area. It was first foreign dignitary who was invited in his private house in Yamanashi. It demonstrates that Prime Minister Modi Abe attached great importance to his partnership and friendship with Prime Minister Modi, and they had a very in-depth, strategic dialogue. It is very important to press ahead and promote a common goal and free and open Indo-Pacific.
So, Ambassador Hiramatsu, I think based on what you are saying, you are indicating that on economic issues, defense issues, and a whole range of areas, tremendous progress was made during this visit. But before I go further on that, I wanted to also recall for you Prime Minister Abe's visit to India, I think a couple of years ago, when he also visited Gujarat. And you would have been present during that visit. What were the impressions that you formed during that visit, the welcome given to him, and how Prime Minister Abe himself personally relates to India and the India-Japan relationship?
He still remembers very vividly, the very overwhelming welcome extended to Prime Minister Abe on his visit to Gujarat last year. I think he has visited almost 50, 60 countries so far, but it was the best visit he had made so far. The overwhelming welcome by Gujarati people, all attention paid to welcome Prime Minister Abe, and also many substance in our discussion. So we are very pleased and overwhelmed by the huge welcome extended by him, and we wanted to reciprocate this kind of welcome to Prime Minister Modi this time. The number, it is difficult to have the same number of people receiving the street, but we made a special arrangement that Prime Minister Modi will be received in his private house. So personal touch is very important in their already strong friendship.
Absolutely. In fact, before the visit had taken place, we had seen reports indicating that Prime Minister Abe would make some special gesture in response to the experience he had during his visit to India, and perhaps his inviting our Prime Minister to Lake Yamanaka and the house in Yamanashi Prefecture was a response to that. I recall that in 2007, when Prime Minister Abe had visited to India, he had spoken to the Indian Parliament. And clearly the relationship between the two countries has evolved considerably. I had the privilege of serving in Japan from 1985 to 1988. That was some time ago. And at that time, one had the sense that Japan was not really focused on India. It had other relationships. It was very preoccupied with the Japan-United States relationship. It was looking closely at what was happening in terms of economic effort in China, and there was a lot of focus there. But since then, clearly things have changed. And the Japanese Prime Minister, speaking at the Indian Parliament, spoke about the confluence of the two seas. And I think that was the first time anybody had articulated at that level how cooperation was necessary in the context of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. And today, of course, the Indo-Pacific has become like a buzzword. Everybody is talking about it. So in the context of the Indo-Pacific, and given the vision that Prime Minister Abe himself has articulated way back in 2007, how do you see the relationship with India in that area?
I think Prime Minister has started this kind of notion of free and open Indo-Pacific when he made a speech in Indian Parliament 2007. He was very much convinced that India and Japan should work together for the prosperity and peace in this region. Two oceans are really connected, so you have to take it to a very huge body of water in the world, and how to make it peace and more stable based on the international legal regime, and also to have a more prosperous region, to have a more connectivity project to connect every part of this ocean. So he has started this vision when he made a speech in Indian Parliament. He has developed his notion, and he has announced this new strategy called Free and Open Indo-Pacific Vision. It was, I think, 2 years ago. He announced it in Kenya when he attended a meeting of Asian African Conference and TICAD. So it was a development of his idea, which was announced in 2007, and he had a lot of discussion after that with various leaders in this region, including Indian leader, how to develop this vision, how to make it more concrete. So in that way, he announced this vision 2 years back, and it's becoming very well received. And Prime Minister Modi had a speech in Shangri-La Dialogue, I think half a month ago.
Yes, in June, 1st of June.
In June, right. So he really articulated his vision with regard to Indo-Pacific vision. So we think that vision of Free and Indo-Pacific and Prime Minister's vision is very, very similar. And there are a lot of synergy between the two visions. So based on that, we'd like to have a more cooperation. We'd like to have a more joint implementation of some projects. So this is really basis for our bilateral relationship. This is not something happens very recently, but his idea was already expressed in 2007. So he's just elaborating his idea together with some conversation, discussion with various leaders.
Well, I recall Prime Minister Abe himself in 2014, speaking at the same Shangri-La dialogue, had said that in the context of the Indo-Pacific, that Japan believes in rule of law, Asia believes in rule of law, and the rule of law for all of us. So it's a vision very similar to what Prime Minister Modi articulated this year.
I drafted this speech.
Well, I must congratulate you for that.
It is the beginning of how the region will be dominated by the idea of rule of law and UNCLOS, and this idea of how this rule of law and freedom navigation of flight will prevail in this region. That is really fundamental for securing peace and stability in this region. So I think India really share this vision.
So in the context of the Indo-Pacific, of course, India and Japan also have the trilateral cooperation involving the United States, and now recent quadrilateral dialogue where Australia also comes in. And then there is the Malabar series of naval exercises involving India, Japan, the United States, increasing in complexity and depth. So in that framework, India and Japan have also looked at joint projects in the Indo-Pacific region. Countries mentioned are Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Africa. There is the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, to which the two have committed about $40 million. How has that progressed? And do you see that also as a response to China's effort through the One Belt, One Road initiative, where there are some concerns related to debt sustainability, transparency of the projects? So where is the India-Japan effort in this area?
I think the connectivity in this region is very important based on the basic values, basic principles, like as you mentioned, that the sound debt financing practice, and also economic viability and environmental and social considerations and so on. So we like to promote the idea of quality infrastructure in this region, in which you can have a very good and very reliable and resilient infrastructure in this region. In that way, we can have a better connectivity in this region. So we are hoping that this kind of notion of the sustainable and resilient connectivity project will be implemented in this region. So, and of course, the basic idea of freedom navigation and rule-based order in this region, and that kind of basic principle will be shared by all countries in this region.
So has that made progress? Is there implementation happening on the ground, or is there still only discussions going on?
In terms of Japan-India relationship, we have agreed to implement some of the concrete projects in Bangladesh road project, and Sri Lanka LNG project, and also Myanmar some construction in the Rakhine states of houses, and we have already agreed to implement some of the project. So we have started some discussion, and in this particular discussion between two leaders, so this is not just a talk, but we have seen already some concrete project which will be implemented in very near future. Very happy to see that.
I'm glad to hear that. Ambassador Hiramatsu, I wanted to take your attention a little to the economic relationship between India and Japan, because in any partnership, the economic partnership provides really the substance, the base for other dimensions. Now, the India-Japan trade seems to have stagnated at $16 billion, and although both countries had set a vision for $50 billion by 2022, unlikely to be realized. And if you compare that, for example, with Japan's trade with China, which is about $350 billion. And again, investments, $28 billion, certainly very good, but more could be done. Again, when I was serving in Japan, at that time, I saw the first major cooperation project between India and Japan starting, the Maruti Suzuki project. And starting from that, we have reached another level of cooperation in industrial partnership. But what do you see are the difficulties and the obstacles that have prevented us from advancing even more?
I think our investment to India has been increasing very steady manner, and our trade is growing, even though it is not as big as we hoped, but the level of trade between countries are steadily growing. And I'm very happy to see that. But at the same time, I like to see more investment, for example, from Japan to India. For example, in various areas, we are concentrating on manufacturing sectors like automobile industry and big road construction and so on. But I like to diversify our investment in these countries, which include, for example, retail industry, service industries, and some environment-related industry, food industry. So we are trying to do that. And I see a lot of enthusiasm on the part of Japanese business leaders to do more business in this country based on the very huge potential India has in terms of economic development and also very talented young people in this country. Japan can offer technology and also financing to support your development. But India can provide us, for example, the very talented people for our development. So this is mutually beneficial relationship. So I'm encouraging Japanese business leaders to look into India in a more positive manner, and medium and long-term perspective is needed for that. And I think the government of India is doing very much effort to facilitate investment in this country, and ease the doing business. Its ranking is now going up. We are very happy to see that. But of course, infrastructure should be improved even more, and some kind of regulation is Japanese companies are facing some difficulties. I'm talking with Indian people, some government officials, to make sure that Japanese companies will be more readily invest in these countries, providing investment friendly atmosphere in all parts of India. So I think your effort is now taking some fruits.
All right, so what you're saying is a lot has happened, more needs to be done. And of course, I noticed that Japan has been involved in supporting the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor project, the Western Freight Corridor project. You have also set up a startup hub in Bengaluru, and NASCOM has set up an IT corridor in Hiroshima Prefecture. And there is also talk of easing visas for Indians as part of skilled contributions in the Japanese technology sectors. These would create a new opportunity. But moving away from the economic to defense cooperation, because very often in many partnerships, the defense cooperation dimension is seen as something reflecting a heightened level of confidence in the relationship, because that's the kind of technology that you don't easily share with others. Now, with Japan, as you mentioned, first country that we had the 2+2 dialogue at the bureaucratic level, and now elevated to the ministerial level, and only the second country with which India has that dialogue. We have a whole series of exchanges at different levels. There is now Japanese supply to India of defense equipment that is being looked at, and also technology collaboration for unmanned ground vehicles, for artificial intelligence. So how are you assessing the level of cooperation in defense, and is there still some reluctance in Japan, or are things changing?
I don't see any kind of reluctance on the part of Japanese defense people. They are very keen to have a more collaboration with Indian counterparts. As you mentioned, a lot of concrete actions are taking place in these 2-3 years. When I was posted here, the level of interaction in the defense and security sphere is a little bit lagging behind from this very robust economic relationship. But in these 2-3 years, things are really happening with regard to the level of the joint exercises. Malabar is one big example. This is Japan, India, United States trilateral exercise. It is happening every year. The level of interoperability, level of participation size have been increasing every time they have this kind of exercise. And we have exercises Army to Army level and Air Force to Air Force level. So all forces, all services, we have same kind of joint exercises. So as you mentioned, we are very keen to transfer our equipment technology to India. For example, as you mentioned, this unmanned vehicle and robotics, we have started joint research activities. We are very happy to expand more with the participation of private sectors with regard to our defense equipment cooperation. So many things are now happening. It demonstrates that this strategic dialogue is really bearing fruits. So that's very nice to see that. This is not only economic relationship, but our relationship is really based on this real understanding.
You had in your earlier comments referred to AXA, the Acquisition and Cross-Servicing Agreement. Could you tell us the significance of that agreement?
This is important. For example, if you have a joint exercise, you need to exchange your equipment, service, and also some supplies. So we have already agreed this kind of arrangement with different other countries like United States, Australia, United Kingdom. So we are very happy to have this kind of arrangement to make sure that we have a more smooth operation when we have a joint exercise, when we participate in the same place in PKO operations, and also we can understand each other's equipment level. So in this way, we have a more operational level understanding between two countries. Well, it is very crucial to have this kind of arrangement. It will elevate our cooperation in defense sphere in next level.
And clearly reflecting a higher level of cooperation. And I also noticed that in the recent visit of the Indian Prime Minister, there was also agreement on space cooperation and an annual space dialogue. Could you tell us about what are the areas of space cooperation that we are now looking at?
We are already agreed upon the cooperation between JAXA and IFRO, and we are happy to elevate this cooperation to the next level. We are trying to work together to launch the rocket to the moon. So this is one area we have already agreed upon.
Okay.
So there are many areas we have already started to cooperate together with India.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Hiramatsu, for those very, very detailed and sort of good explanations. So a little bit now on your personal experience in India. You've been here now for 3 years, and I've seen that you've traveled to different parts of India several times, including to the Northeast. So what has been your personal experience in India? How have you found your work here, your interaction with people?
I see a lot of energy in this country, very dynamic country. So many things are happening. So I see a very positive energy in this country. Especially we feel a very goodwill from Indian people vis-a-vis Japan. So I'm very happy to work with Indian people and to promote, to create something very concrete. I'm not only here in Delhi, but I'm traveling a lot in different parts of India to support the development of different parts of India. Especially I have a special interest to support northeastern region. So this is a strategically important part of India, and there are a lot of goodwill towards Japan.
Can you tell us about some of the projects that you're doing in the Northeast? Because there is also an India-Japan Act East Forum. And so what are the discussions and projects emerging from that?
We have a lot of discussion what kind of project we are going to cooperate together. And we have already started some road improvement project in Meghalaya and Mizoram. So we have agreed in the last summit meeting to expand our cooperation, which includes construction of a new bridge crossing Brahmaputra River. That will be the longest bridge in India. So that will connect Bhutan-Assam border to Meghalaya, Bangladesh border. This will be a huge road project. So not only connectivity, but also we like to support the effort, for example, disaster risk management, and also some, people-to-people exchange programs. And we are very happy to support everything they ask us to collaborate with this region. We feel a lot of sympathy and a lot of friendship from this region too.
Some years ago, I noticed you had written an article where you had spoken of Mottainai, and I think you're talking about waste, about also the challenge of climate change. And Japan had dealt with the problem of pollution many, many years ago. So based on your experience, how are you seeing the problem in India, in Delhi, and what's your sense of what is the way forward?
We had a bad experience in 60s and 70s last century. We have overcome this problem by making use of technology, a lot of collaboration between the government and people and local government, and education plays a very important role to support this endeavor. So we have a lot of experience and technology accumulated to overcome these problems of pollution, air pollution, river pollution, any environmental issues. So we have already engaged with Indian government to support, for example, Clean Ganga initiative, and we started a program called Blue Sky Initiative to support, alleviate the pollution level in big cities like Delhi. So we, for example, the waste management plays a very important role. We have a technology called waste to energy technology, how to make use of solid waste to produce energy. Well, this kind of technology is very, very well used in Japan. So we'd like to transfer this technology to India to make sure that you can tackle with this very huge problem of environment and also air pollution issues. So we like to share our experience.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing to advance the India-Japan relationship. And you'd have seen several of these annual summits during your tenure. You're, of course, also traveling to different parts of India. So we wish you the best for the rest of your assignment here. And as Ambassador Hiramatsu's comments indicated, the India-Japan relationship has really strengthened, and both countries and their diplomats are working to advance it further. Prime Minister Abe, in one of his comments in India, had quoted Swami Vivekananda and said that though the different streams had different sources, the waters eventually mingled in the sea. And Prime Minister Modi, during his recent visit to Japan, had said that Japan provides the best amalgam of Eastern and Western cultures and values. And the relationship extends from sea to space, from health to defense, from digital to cyber. So clearly, a lot of depth, substance has been added to the relationship, and there is potential to do much more. Thank you for joining the show today.